Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Ramo Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ramo Ramo Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Mainstay. Go for melody. Jai.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Sure. Now, many of you can shift here if you like, so that you can see more clearly if you like. There's a lot of space here. Yeah, and Prabhu, I don't need this, so you can take. More people can sit here also. Yeah, you can just keep it down.
You want to put it here?
Sure, that's a good idea. Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. You have to dry it. Okay, perfect. You can move this aside.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. First of all, thank you very much for coming, and deep gratitude to His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. It is our immense good fortune that he is with us. Getting sadhu at our home is our privilege. Most of us know him, and he needs no introduction. But glorifying a sadhu gives me purification, and I get an opportunity. And also for some of my family and friends and neighbors. So a quick introduction about our speaker for the day. So His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. He is a monk and a spiritual author, and he also belongs to one of our community, which is also called as software engineering. He has done his electronics and telecommunications engineering from Government College of Engineering, Pune. He subsequently served as a software engineer in a prominent multinational software corporation. But seeing the prevalent problems of stress, depression, addiction, and overall misdirection, all caused by a lack of spirituality, he felt inspired to dedicate his life to the cause of sharing the spiritual wisdom of Bhagavad Gita under the aegis of ISKCON. He is a member of ISKCON's leading intellectual body, the Shastric Advisory Council, and is the associate editor of ISKCON's global magazine, Back to Godhead. He is the author of world's only Gita daily feature, wherein he writes daily a 300-word inspirational reflection on a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. He has written over 1700 Gita meditations that are posted on www.gitadaily.com and are read through daily feeds by thousands from all over the world. He travels all over the world from Australia to America, giving talks on spiritual subjects in temples, universities, and companies. His articles have been published in many national newspapers, including Indian Express, Economic Times, Times of India, and in the Speaking Tree column. His writings in English have been translated into several foreign languages, including German, Chinese, Romanian, and several Indian languages, including Kannada, Telugu, Bengali, Hindi, and Marathi. And he is the author of 16 books. So it's my great fortune and privilege to welcome His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Please let's welcome him by loudly chanting Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Over to you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Am I audible? Okay, thank you. Sure.
So, dear devotees, I request housekeeping. Sorry, before we interrupt Prabhu further, we'll request, these are premium spots, only $1,000 seats, but it's free today. Please come closer to Prabhu. We'll need every inch of our space. And request, please feel free to come forward. And if there are any things, we'll need all the space possible. While you have the space, please come forward. And for those with kids, in case the kids need some time, they are making noise. There are rooms outside in the backyard, garage, feel free. There are some chips for the kids whenever you want, something like that. Thank you. Over to you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. I was thinking that there are some special invisible guests sitting over here. I think still some invisible people are there. Please come ahead. If possible. Everyone here is a vegetarian. Nobody is going to eat anyone. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatariणे Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today. And I'll be discussing on the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I've been taking a series and each class is of course independent. So how many of you have heard the previous classes? Anyone? Okay, a few of you. So basically, the first session I discussed the importance of the 9th chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is essentially answering Arjuna's question, which he asks in 2.7, that is dharma. What is the right thing to do? Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. I want to know what is the right thing to do. In this context, he has to decide whether I should fight or not fight. And while answering his question, Krishna expands Arjuna's paradigm. That Arjuna is thinking, I have two options, that I fight or I don't fight. Now he actually asks a universal question. He doesn't ask, what should I do? He doesn't even ask, what is my dharma? He asks, what is dharma? So, fighting is a specific activity. So, it says work or engage with the world. That's the principle of that. Don't fight is renounce. So, Krishna expands Arjuna's vision. This is Arjuna's vision of his options. In one sense, education expands our options. Say, for example, if we don't know much about the various colleges that are there in the world, then if we have to have a career, okay, maybe I have to go in this college or that college, or I have to take this course or that course. But the more we become educated, hey, there are so many options for me. So education at one level expands our choices. And another understanding of education is, as we become more educated, it also shrinks our choices. Yeah, this doesn't work for me. This doesn't work for me. Okay. I hope the mic is not saying this doesn't work for me. So, education, first, what it does is it expands our options. We all have options in life. So, say if somebody gets cancer, okay, my only option is I have to take a painful chemotherapy. But then if we come to know, no, there are so many new treatments that are available. We can do this, do that. But then we can't do all treatments. Okay, we expand our options. And then as we move forward, then we reduce our options. So education should be able to do both. Now, if education, this is education. But if there is only a direct instruction, do this, that. So in one sense what is happening is you are expanding the options and then reducing the options. So through that, the person grows in understanding. If we just give a direct instruction, do this, and even if, say, the person giving the instruction is wise, but through that direct giving of the instruction, the person receiving the instruction may not grow much, especially grow in the process of decision making. So what Krishna does is, he says that there are actually 4 options for you. There is, does anyone remember the 4 options from the first session? Yes, thank you, yes. So there can be, in work there are 2 options. There can be detached work, then there can be attached work, yes. If you tell the first, the second is obvious in one sense. Thank you. What is the third? Yes. So renouncing, there can be false renunciation. Means one is renouncing just for show. And there can be real renunciation. So, in this way, he expands his options. And in the idea of detached work, there are further 2 options. Can you remember those 2 options? We can work in, so out of these 4 options, which does Krishna recommend? Yes, so he recommends this. What about attached work? Well, not really. This is called technically as karma kanda. Although Krishna briefly mentions this, but that is not the recommended level. False renunciation? Certainly not. So this is it. For example, 3.6 is, this is a person is hypocrite. Real renunciation? Yes. But among these, this is what he recommends the highest. So for real renunciation, there are 2 options. There is Dhyan Yoga and there is Jnana Yoga. And then for detached work, there is Karma Yoga and there is Bhakti Yoga. So if you are finding all this very technical, don't worry. Things will become only more complex after this. I don't worry, things will become simpler. So, Krishna, till now, while so basically he's expanded Arjuna's options, and he has now, till now, in the first 6 chapters, so Karma Yoga he's explored from chapters 1 to 5. Dhyan Yoga he's explored in chapter 6. And then from chapter 7 to 12, he explores Bhakti Yoga. And then Jnana Yoga, basically, he'll explore from chapters 13 to 16, 13 to 18, where he will culminate again in Bhakti Yoga. So right now we are in the Bhakti Yoga section. That work, do your work, but in a mood of devotion. And in that connection, so this was broadly the first session. So the Bhagavad Gita's 9th chapter has 34 verses. So yesterday I discussed the first 10 verses, where the broad theme was that if ultimately God is in control of everything, then why is there so much evil in the world? I discussed 3 levels of problems that a person might face. Anyone remember 3 levels? Adversity. Adversity means? Yes, that some bad thing happens to us. So worse than adversity is? Atrocity. Atrocity means some bad thing is done to us. And the worst is? Now the word perplexity does not always mean this. Perplexity just means indecision. We don't know what to do. But in this context, I'm saying that if we ourselves have no good choice, like we have 2 bad choices. It's like either I'll shoot you today or I'll shoot you tomorrow. What do you want to do? It's like 2 bad choices. So Arjuna in one sense had, so Arjuna didn't just have face-to-face adversity or atrocity, but he was facing a perplexity. Fighting was a terrible thing to do. He had to fight against his relatives, he had to fight against his elders, to fight against his teacher. Extremely difficult. But not fighting would mean that unrighteous people would conquer the world, would break havoc in society. The Duryodhana was such a Duryodhana and his cohort, those who were in cahoots with him, were so brazen that they had, in a public assembly, tried to dishonor Draupadi. Now, if somebody commits a crime like, say, abusing a woman, people generally do it secretly where nobody comes to know about it. But if somebody does it in public, that means that person doesn't fear the law or doesn't fear people. But imagine if somebody goes into a police station or a court and does a crime like that. That means that person has no fear of anyone at all. So Duryodhana's trying to oppose, dishonor Draupadi was like that. So if a person like that was given untrammeled, unchallenged power, the person could devastate society. So if he didn't fight, he would be failing in his duty as a Kshatriya. So Kshatriyas are meant to be martial guardians of society. If he didn't fight, he would be failing in his duty as a Kshatriya. If he would be failing in his duty as a member of the Kuru dynasty. He would be killing in his elders and his dynasty. So two bad choices. What does one do? So especially for a person who is responsible, such a situation is extremely agonizing. And yesterday, we discussed broadly how when bad things happen in this world, it is not that the bad things are done by God. When bad people do bad things, that is allowed by God. So, you could put it in one way that there is nothing happens without God's will. So, if we consider God's will to be like a big circle, now if say this is the positive axis, positive side of the axis, and this is the negative side. So, within God's will, there are things which are desired by God. And there are things which are permitted by God. So permitted means if some evil person wants to do some evil thing, if that person has some good karma from their past, then they will have a certain level of influence. And that person can do terrible things, but for a certain amount of time, only as long as they have some karma. See, our karma is like our money. Normally, if somebody has a lot of money, they can abuse that money. But they can abuse that money, they can squander that money, they can use that to harm others. And as long as it is their money, they can use it. But once their money runs out, they won't be able to do anything. So, but as long as they have money, they can use it or abuse it. So there are some actions which are permitted by God. They are not desired by God. So that was the broad theme. That yes, God controls everything, but that does not mean that every single thing that is happening in the world is being done by God. It may be allowed by God. It is done by people who are evil. So Krishna says, Maya adhyakshena prakriti. That everything is within my supervision. That doesn't necessarily mean everything is my intention. So now with this understanding of God's controllership of the world and our role in the world, now we look at the second section. We'll see how much we can explore. Mostly I'll explore from 11 to 18. So we will talk about how different people have different attitudes towards God. So Krishna starts with the extremes. In 11 and 12, okay, let me put it the other way. So in 11 and 12, he starts by talking about those who are demoniac. The word the demoniac can sound a very strong word, but the idea is that those who are against God and godly behavior, those who are of a demoniac nature. Then 13-14 he talks about those who are of a divine nature. And then after that he talks about those who are in between. So for example, in 15 he further talks 3 levels of people, those who are in between. And then the implied understanding of all this analysis is that we should try to act in alignment with the divine nature. So let me explain this one by one. So 11-12, he starts with the question of people who are ungodly, who are not just ungodly, you can say there are people who are not just atheists, but there is a species or a class of people who are anti-theists. They don't just disbelieve in God, they consider that the very idea of God is itself an anathema. The very idea of God is so toxic that it should be eradicated. So, now, avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam. So, sometimes if we consider that the Bhagavad Gita is a part of the Mahabharata, and see, when two people are having a discussion, sometimes there is a way of speaking, like in Hindi we say, akalmand ko ishara kafi hota hai. So like two people are talking and the speaker has a particular person whom they are referring to. And the audience understand who is being referred to. But that person is not referred by name. So everybody understands what is being talked about. So if we consider from the Gita's perspective, these verses 11 and 12, avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. That those who deride me, thinking that I am an ordinary human being, that when I have descended into this world, I have become an ordinary human being. Such people are mudhas, they are foolish. Param bhavam ajananto, they do not understand my supreme nature. So when Krishna is speaking this, we can almost envision that Krishna and Arjuna both know that he's referring to Duryodhana over there. Duryodhana was not externally a demon. If we consider demon, in Sanskrit there are two words, and Krishna will refer to both the words. There is Rakshasa and there is Asura. So Rakshasa is a species. It is a biological form. There are Rakshasas who have multiple heads and they have horns coming out. Asura is a mentality. So in the Ramayana, Ravana is a Rakshasa. In the Mahabharata, Duryodhana is not a Rakshasa. Duryodhana is not a demon in the sense that he is a human being. He is born in the human dynasty. But his mentality is asuric. His mentality is demoniac. So, if we consider the incident which brings this out most graphically, where Duryodhana derides Krishna's position, which incident do you think it is? Sorry? Yes. When he attempts to arrest Krishna, okay. Yeah, when Krishna comes as a peace messenger. And then, at that time, Krishna, now Duryodhana could have said, I didn't know that Krishna is God. And now sages had already told him about that Krishna's divinity. Bhishma had told him. But he says, okay, yeah, he respected Krishna as a strategic person, as a warrior. But his plan was, I'll try to allure Krishna. So, once I was asked to, in a management college in India, I was asked to talk about life lessons from the Mahabharata. But that college was very leftist. So they said, don't tell the normal stories, tell something new. So they gave a suggested topic, leadership lessons from Duryodhana. So then I spoke at that time that, if any of us has siblings, maybe younger siblings, one or two, if any of you, to try to get one younger sibling to listen to us. It is not easy, isn't it? Duryodhana had how many younger siblings? 99. And they all followed him. So he definitely had leadership qualities. But the point is, you may be leading, you may have the quality to lead people, but where are you leading people? That is important. So for optics, Duryodhana he's a politician. He knew how to serve his ends. So for optics, when he had built palaces for his entire family, he had made Dushasan's palace bigger than his own palace, better than his own palace. He says, actually, I am the king. It is all for serving others. See Dushasana. So he told Krishna, you can stay in Dushasana's palace. And he wanted to give Krishna gifts and feast, and Krishna didn't accept that. And the next day, his plan was that he would allure Krishna. That didn't work. The next day, Krishna made an earnest pitch to try to get him to listen, to seek peace. But that just didn't work. At the end of it, what did Duryodhan say? Now, when he rejected the peace proposal, what did he say? I won't give you enough land to put the tip of a needle through. Now, in terms of dialogue, it can seem a very impressive dialogue. But in terms of the impact, what does it mean? Say, suppose we invite somebody for a program and they don't want to come for the program. So they make an excuse. Now, we know that they are making an excuse, and they know that we know that they are making an excuse. But at least, out of politeness, they are trying to make an excuse. But if we invite somebody for a program and they say, even if I die, my dead body will never come to your program. Then they are not just refusing the invitation. They are like kicking the person in the face practically. Not practically, not metaphorically. But it's like that. So Duryodhan's rejection was like that. And then Krishna spoke at that time. He tried to make a last-ditch effort to try to persuade the entire assembly. And if you listen to him, your assent to his obstinacy will become the cause of the destruction of the whole dynasty. And then when Duryodhana started feeling that my control over my own people is getting lost, then he switched to he had a plan A, that was to persuade Krishna. So his plan B was just neglect Krishna. But then he had an emergency plan. His emergency plan was arrest Krishna. And when he tried to arrest Krishna, Krishna just laughed and exhibited his universal form. And the universal form just spread across the whole firmament. Nantam na madhyam na punastavadim. Arjuna describes the universal form, and that's what he also saw. No beginning, no middle, no end. It was just awesome. It is. From aw, two words come up. One time one devotee came to me after a class and with a broad smile says, Prabhu, your class was awful. So I was a little taken aback. And then I looked at him and he was smiling broadly. I was wondering whether he's being sarcastic or what. Then I understood that this was in India. His vocabulary was not good. He wanted to say awesome. He ended up saying awful. So now, from the person, this form was awe-inspiring. And for those who were devoted, it was an awesome form. For Duryodhana, it was awful in the sense that it filled his soldiers with fear. Whomever angered, what can this form do? All his soldiers, there was like elite soldiers were there whom he had got to arrest. They all arrest Duryodhana, Krishna. They all fell back in fear. And then Krishna nonchalantly just smiled, withdrew his form, and he had come with Satyaki. He put his arm on Satyaki's shoulder and just walked away as if they were going for a stroll. And he departed. Now, then very next day, Duryodhana gave his own rationalization. He said, this Krishna is a magician. He just showed some magic forms. If I had a time, I would have also performed some yoga. I could have also shown many magic forms. But in the war, none of these magic forms will work. So this is Manushim Tanumashritam. That the thing that Krishna is just an ordinary human being. Even when Param Bhavam Ajananto, even when he has actually seen the supreme form. He has seen the supreme nature of the Lord, but he doesn't accept it. So those who, in that sense, knowingly defy and reject the Lord, They, Krishna says they are condemned. Next verse is Moghasha Mogha Karmano Mogha Jnana Vichetasa Rakshasi Masurim Chaiva Prakritim Mohinim Shritaha. So those who knowingly defy God, and not only they defy God, but they also act in anti-spiritual, anti-social, immoral ways, then they go on a downward trajectory. So that is, if we go over here, see there are actions which may be permitted by God in this trajectory. But if one consistently keeps only doing these actions again and again and again, then eventually they will have the consequences coming for them. And those consequences will be devastating. So Krishna first starts by telling that this is not the way one should act. So we all have had some sense of experience of something higher, something bigger in life. In India, quite often there is the spiritual conception. If somebody just starts exploring spirituality, we have the idea that I am God, or we are all God. In my engineering, when I was studying engineering, when I started exploring philosophy, I was always a reader, but I used to read other kinds of books, self-help and psychology. But when I started exploring philosophy books, and then I read this impersonalist idea that we are God, that I am God. My first thought was, if I am God, the world is in big trouble. I can't manage my own life if I have to manage the whole world. So I felt something is wrong in this. Then that is almost an oversimplification to the point of distortion. We are not God. We are gods. We belong to God. We are His parts. So that is a misunderstanding. Right. So that is the one extreme where we misunderstand God's divinity. That misunderstanding can be in various ways, that God doesn't exist, or that God doesn't really have power, or that I am God. All these are misunderstandings. They will take us on a downward trajectory. This is the trajectory to be avoided. Then Krishna talks about, so as I mentioned, and 11-12 he talks about the demoniac nature. Then 13-14 he's talking about the divine nature. So we could put it this way, that say this is where we are right now. So if we go against God and against the goodness, then this is the demoniac nature. This is the downward trajectory we'll go. So this is what Krishna is describing. This is how Duryodhana is acting, and he needs to be stopped. And then he talks about the divine nature, how there's an upward trajectory. That he describes in 13 and 14. So, Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha. Those who are great souls, they take shelter of my divine nature. Now, divine nature, what does it mean? Ultimately, it means we align the human will with the divine will. That we all understand that we are parts of something bigger than ourselves. So in general, in life, if we consider, many of us, we are often told that, or we often think we all want pleasure. And yes, we are all happiness-seeking creatures, we want pleasure. But it is not that simple. Actually, if suppose somebody told us that from tomorrow onwards, you have no financial obligation, no social obligation. From tomorrow onwards for the rest of your life, from morning to night, just watch comedies and enjoy life. Now, would we be able to enjoy? Yeah, maybe half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours. Maybe if we have been very frustrated, maybe one day, maybe one weekend. But afterwards, just watching comedy and laughing, okay, we'll get tired of laughing. We want not just pleasure, we want meaningful pleasure. We all want to do something that is valuable, that is meaningful in life. So yes, while we want pleasure, but specifically the kind of pleasure that we want is meaningful pleasure. And in fact, meaning is so important that sometimes if there is a choice we will actually give meaning greater value than pleasure. Say, for example, just now the world is coming out of the pandemic. Say, during the pandemic, this is complete chaos everywhere. And so, suppose we had some little medical training, medical knowledge, and we wanted to help. But we didn't know how to actually help people because we didn't have the medical know-how. We want to help, but we don't know how to help. But suppose we know a particular medical expert, a doctor who really knows the field, who knows the disease, who knows the treatment, who has a very impeccable track record, and then we have a opportunity to be a part of that team. Yes, I can save people's life. I can help people avoid so much distress and pain and death. We would want to help if we could, isn't it? So we all want to belong to something meaningful that is bigger than ourselves. Something meaningful that is bigger than ourselves. And that something meaningful can vary. Okay, where did this come from? Well, yeah, is it meaningful? It's a good question. I think I think you will have to change your password then. Okay. So probably somehow this garland caused control V or something like that. Let me put it aside. Okay. So now we all seek something bigger than ourselves to be a part of, to find meaning in life. So at a basic level, our family is also, if we are an individual, we have a family as a unit bigger than ourselves. So if somebody is just all alone, just working for themselves, you may have wealth, you may have power, you may have prestige, but whom am I going to share that with? Isn't it? We want to belong to somebody, something bigger than ourselves. Now, from beyond the family, it could be our community, it could be our nation, it could be even humanity, it could be the environment. Like that, there can be many different circles that bigger than ourselves that we may be a part of. So like that, we all want to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And among all these things, the Gita says that the biggest circle, the circle that includes all circles, is Krishna. He is the ultimate reality. All of existence is contained within him. And we are eternally his parts. So we may function, if we are a part of a family, the family provides us something and we give something to the family. We're a part of a country, the country gives us certain freedoms and privileges and facilities, and then we do something for the country. We give taxes, we follow the rules. So in each of these units, there is something we take from the unit, from these bigger wholes which we are part of, and we get back something from that. The same principle applies in our relationship with Krishna. So Mahatma, the word Krishna uses Mahatma. Now Mahatma has become a common, or not so common, but a well-known title for people who are considered great. Now from a philosophical perspective, the word Mahatma can seem paradoxical. Because the Mahatma, Maha means great, and soul is, Atma is soul. Now it is a paradoxical statement because the soul is actually very small. The soul is just 1/10,000 the tip of a hair. Keshagrasya tadbhagasya satadha kalpitasya cha. So how can this tiny soul ever become a Mahatma? How can a tiny soul be considered a great soul? It is when this tiny soul's consciousness expands greatly to reach the ultimate reality. So when the small soul starts linking with the biggest reality, with the Mahat reality. That is the same, the Anuatma becomes Mahatma. And that's why Mahatmanastu Mam Partha Daivim Prakritimashra. It's a shelter of divine nature. Bhajanti Ananya Manaso Gyatva Bhutadimavyam. Understands that I am the source of everything. That there's nothing that exists beyond me. Everything exists within me. So the Gita's understanding is not just that Krishna exists somewhere in the spiritual world far away. Actually, Krishna pervades, sustains and contains all of existence. So Krishna is present everywhere. Krishna is present in our hearts. Krishna is present in the world. So the whole of existence is within Krishna. The idea is that, say if we consider this is the material world and this is the spiritual world, this is the eternal world. So often our conception is that Krishna exists here and we have to go from this world to that world to attain Krishna. Well, yes, that is one understanding, but the more complete understanding is that this is the spiritual world, this is the material world, and all of it is pervaded by Krishna. Now, of course, while Krishna is pervaded, all of it is pervaded by Krishna, but we could say in terms of manifestation. In terms of manifestation, Krishna manifests much more in the spiritual world. In this world, we cannot see Krishna directly. As our consciousness becomes more spiritual, we can perceive him more. So Prabhupada talks about the idea of the kingdom of God. So it is the Christian word, the idea of kingdom of God. Prabhupada says, what is the meaning of this? He says, at one level, everything is the kingdom of God. Because God is the supreme controller everywhere. But more specifically, the kingdom of God is the place where God is acknowledged and celebrated as the king. And then there he, in reciprocation, manifests himself. So, why are we talking about this over here? The person who understands that Krishna is this ultimate whole who contains everything, then that person becomes devoted to Krishna. Gyatva bhutadim avyayam. He has no beginning, he has no end. He is the one who contains everything. Now specifically, with respect to Arjuna's dilemma, what this means is, if we consider Arjuna to be here, so now Arjuna is belonging to two circles and he is facing a conflict, which circle should I act in? So one is that he is belonging to a particular kula. He belongs to a particular dynasty. And corresponding to that, he has his kula dharma, his duty according to his kula. And then he also belongs to another unity, another whole, he's a kshatriya. So that is his varna, that is his profession. And corresponding with that, he has his kshatriya dharma. So we all belong to multiple wholes. Say for example, we belong to a family. When we belong to a family, if we are a mother or a father, then we have our duty to a family. But we may also be a software engineer. Then we also belong to a particular company. Now suppose it's our child's birthday, and at that time our boss tells us, we have urgent deadline. You stay and work at office. So now we have an obligation to our family, we have an obligation to our company. There are two bigger wholes that we belong to. Which whole do we prioritize at that time? So that depends on what is more important for us. And it may vary. For some people at particular times, maybe their family is more important. Some people at particular times, this job is important. They may decide that. But this is where there is a pull. Where there are two bigger wholes that we belong to, and the two pull us in opposite directions. So here in Arjuna's situation, what happened is, his kula dharma was not at all cool for him. And his kula dharma was pulling him in one direction, and his kshatriya dharma was pulling him in the opposite direction. And Arjuna was confused. What should I do in such a situation? So in this situation, what Krishna tells Arjuna is that at this point, you focus first, not just on this one circle of your kula or the circle of your varna, but focus on the ultimate circle. That is the circle of Krishna. So Krishna Bhakti means it is that we understand that I am a mother or a father in service to Krishna. I am a software engineer in service to Krishna. Because all our various roles and all the bigger holes in which we belong to, they are contained within Krishna. So then I am serving Krishna by taking care of my family. I'm serving Krishna by taking care of my job. So now in this particular situation, what is the best way I can serve Krishna? And then accordingly, you choose that. So I was here in America once at Gita Jayanti festival. It was a Hindu program, and there some kids were reciting Bhagavad Gita. And they were reciting some verses they had memorized, nice recitation. But when they came to 1866, they recited Sarva adharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. So after that, I was a little taken aback. Then I asked the organizers, see this verse, why are they reciting like this? So he told me that there is some scholar who has written a book on the Gita. Now, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, it is very widely distributed. So there are some people who can't become popular themselves. So they ride piggyback on others' popularity. So like that's what Prabhupada's concern was, that people have their own philosophy, and if they write their own philosophy, now they may not get many followers. So they write their philosophy and claim that it is based on the Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada said that is not Bhagavad Gita as it is, that is Bhagavad Gita as you are. So anyway, so this particular scholar, there are many people who write piggyback on the Bhagavad Gita's popularity. But this scholar, you can put scholar in double quotes. So he had written piggyback on Prabhupada's Gita's popularity, and he wrote a book called Bhagavad Gita as it was. And his claim, many, you could say, strange claims. Some of claims may be audacious, some of them may be outright ridiculous. But so one of his claims was that actually Krishna has come to establish dharma. So why would he tell Arjuna to give up dharma? So therefore his resolution is that originally in the Gita, when that verse was there was a over there. But when the Gita was rewritten over times, somebody forgot to put the So Bhagavad Gita as it was means originally it was Sarva Adharman Parityajya. But it was mistaken to be Sarva Dharman Parityajya. And now I am presenting Bhagavad Gita as it was. See, now there is a certain logic to it. But the problem is that logic is completely decontextualized from the Gita. See, within the Gita, for Arjuna, adharma is not an option at all. No, his question itself is, what is dharma? So for a person who is asking, what is dharma, you don't have to tell that person to give up adharma. Isn't it? So if somebody comes from India to America and then they want to they want to drive a car, and they ask you, what is the law? What is the traffic rule? You tell them, don't break the traffic rules. No, it's already, I want to know what is the traffic rule. So you don't have to tell me don't break the traffic rules. You don't just have to tell me what is the rule. Isn't it? So the word dharma has different meanings. And the primary meaning in the Gita of the word dharma is the right thing to do. What is the right thing, the responsible thing to do? That Arjuna is asking, Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chita. This is the meaning in 2.7. Now there is another meaning That is, doing the right thing is not just the individual's responsibility. Society should also be organized in such a way that for people to do the right thing is easy, or at least it's not difficult. That means if you tell people everybody should be honest and nobody should do any corruption, but the government is arranged in such a way that nothing gets done without corruption, then just telling people be honest, be upstanding, don't be corrupt, that's not really helpful. So to establish dharma, to do the right thing, it is both the individual responsibility and it's also the social responsibility. So the another meaning of dharma is also social order. And this is the sense in which Krishna uses in 4.8 and 9. Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. It is the social order that makes individual morality, individual ethical conduct easier. But the primary meaning in which Gita uses is dharma is the right thing to do. And when Krishna is using in 1866, when he is saying sarva dharman parityajya, what he means is that Arjuna is having, okay, should I do my Kula dharma or should I do my Kshatriya dharma? Should I focus on that I belong to this whole of this dynasty, or should I focus on that I belong to this whole of my professional community? Krishna says, forget all these bigger holes. Focus on the biggest hole. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Ultimately, you belong to me and act in relationship to me. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. If you act in relationship with me, so suppose we are working in a company, and say sometimes we may be working in two teams. So we have one project leader in one team and we have another project leader in another team. And the first project leader tells us do this, and the second project leader tells us do this. And then both want it immediately. Then what do? Then if say we know the CEO of the company, we just go and ask the CEO, what should I do? And the CEO says, do this. But then if you say, but if you're telling me to do this, the CEO says, you do what the project leader 1 is telling you. But what about project leader 2? He says, I'll take care of that. If you get into trouble with him, I'll deal with that. So Krishna is in that sense saying, aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami. So when you act in relationship with me, in the context of the Gita, Krishna wants Arjuna to fight, to be an assistant for him in establishing dharma. So in that process, he will not be able to do his Kula dharma. But Krishna says, okay, even if you neglect your Kula dharma, if there is any complication because of that, if there is any sinful reaction because of that, I will take care of it. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha. So the point Krishna is making is that you act in relationship with the ultimate reality. And so this is in the 18th chapter, but the same point is what Krishna is now talking in the 9th chapter. And he says that next verse is Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha drudavrataha. So even those who are completely devoted to Krishna is saying that those who are completely purely focused on the Lord, he says even they require determination. Because for many of us, when we have to do the right thing, if we try to do the right thing, okay, I need to write right thing right first. So, if I have to do the right thing, then for most of us, we have our own conditionings, which become obstacles. So this is, we can say, the common obstacle. Now for those who are purely, conditionings means what? We may have our craving for pleasure, for power, for money, for this, for that. And because of that, we cannot do what would be in service to Krishna. But even if we had no conditionings, as would be the case of those who are purely devoted to Krishna, still this is only obstacle 1. There is obstacle 2, and that is conditions. Conditionings are generally internal, conditions are external. The very nature of the world is that there will be conditions which will obstruct us. And in Arjuna's situation, the condition that is obstructing him in his service to Krishna is the fact that he has to fight against his relatives. So he says, don't let that condition stop you. He says, it is difficult. It is difficult, but go ahead and do it. That's why you need determination. Itantasya drudhavrataha. In this way, if you act, Krishna says that you will ultimately become elevated. You will ultimately become liberated. You will come to me. And because Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone, when Krishna acts when Arjuna acts as a Kshatriya, now at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna says his concluding words, he doesn't say, I will fight. What does he say? I will do your will. That karishye vachanam tava. I will do your will. See, the point, what is the difference between the two? Yes, in that particular context, Krishna's will meant fighting. But the point of the Bhagavad Gita is not that the Bhagavad Gita is telling everyone to fight. That's not the point of the Gita. The point of the Bhagavad Gita, the karishye vachanam tava, I will do your will. That, it's the expression of devotion. So Arjuna is acting as a devotee. Arjuna is acting in relationship with the ultimate reality. And in that particular context, it requires fighting. So I'll conclude with 2 points, then we can have a few questions. There was the prominent author, Indian author, who passed away about maybe 5, 6, 10 years ago. So at that time some obituaries were published. And then one of his quotes I saw when I was flying from India to America, and in a newspaper somebody was reading, he says, India's biggest mistake after independence was that India did not follow the Bhagavad Gita. Really? I was quite intrigued by that. I'd never heard of that author, and I not thought of that author as I had heard about that author, but I'd never thought of that author as a spiritual person. Then I did some Googling and tried to find out. And now he was a politically right-wing. And he said if India had followed Bhagavad Gita, then as soon as India had become independent, India would have attacked Pakistan and annexed Pakistan. And because we did not do that, that is why we have so much problems. So, dharma means we have to fight. Now, is that the application of the Bhagavad Gita? Well, the Bhagavad Gita does call Arjuna to fight. But the Bhagavad Gita itself is not a book that is calling everyone to fight. Isn't it? The essential message of the Bhagavad Gita is practice Bhakti Yoga. Throughout the tradition. Now there are many different yogas which are talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, and other yogas are also analyzed and explained. But the Gita concludes in Bhakti Yoga. So the point is that if we consider there is a universal message and there is a contextual application of that universal message. You could put a universal, you can also put a universal principle. So, the universal principle that Krishna teaches is that it's practice Bhakti Yoga, and what it means is essentially harmonize human will with divine will. Karishye vachanam tava. So, this is practice Bhakti Yoga. Now, 5,000 years ago, when the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, at that time, the contextual application, so you could say 3000 BC, there the application was fight. That is the contextual application. Now, in today's world, what will be the application? In our particular situation, how can we harmonize with the divine will? Now, that will depend on in our family, in our profession, in our society, how do we practice bhakti? So that will vary. Say the Yoga Dharma is chanting the holy names. So we chant japa, we worship the deities, we associate with devotees. So that is how we practice bhakti and harmonize with the divine will. So, so today it will depend on how we practice bhakti yoga is broadly here. Another way. There are, it depends on today's situation. So if you consider today, if you are going to do it, bhakti has broadly two aspects to it. There is immersive bhakti and there is inclusive bhakti. So immersive bhakti means what? I earlier explained this point that if this is the spiritual world, this is the material world. So then immersive bhakti, if we are here, so at one level, Krishna exists everywhere. Now Krishna is manifested more over here in the spiritual world and he's manifested less in the material world. So when we practice bhakti, immersive bhakti means we turn away from the world and we immerse ourselves in Krishna. That is the time when we do our sadhana. That is the time when we say we come in satsang. We forget the world. Just focus ourselves in Krishna. We connect ourselves with Krishna. But that is not the only aspect of bhakti. Then after that, the other aspect of bhakti is inclusive bhakti. Now, inclusive means that we turn toward the world and understand that the world is also the domain of service to Krishna. So I can serve in the circle that I belong to in this world. So when I travel across the world, one of my main purposes is to talk about how we are spiritual beings, that we are souls. But say when I come to America and at American immigration, they ask me, who are you? I cannot say I am the soul. Isn't it? At that time, I have to give my functional identity, the particular country, the particular whole that I belong to. So we have our duties in relationship to the particular whole that we belong to. We cannot just deny those connections or reject those connections. But the point is, we harmonize those connections with Krishna. So, immersive bhakti and inclusive bhakti. Immersive is we turn away from the world to focus on Krishna, and inclusive bhakti means we turn toward Krishna, turn toward the world in a mood of service to Krishna. And when we understand and function in this way, what happens is that actually both these forms of bhakti, we have immersive bhakti and we have inclusive bhakti. So immersive bhakti actually it convinces us. Like I gave earlier the example of the doctor. Say if there's a pandemic and then we want to help, but if we connect with the doctor, we understand the doctor's guidelines, this is to be done, this is not to be done, then our immersive bhakti, that connection energizes us. Yes, now it gives us some confidence, it gives us some purpose, it gives us some clarity. What am I meant to do over here? When we practice, so similarly when we connect with Krishna, we understand that Krishna is my well-wisher and Krishna wants me to become an agent of his compassion. So when I act in a mood of service, I can do good for myself, I can do good for others also. So our immersive bhakti actually in one sense energizes our inclusive bhakti. Because we become more confident, clear about how we can do our various roles. And then when we are able to perform our responsibilities better, when, say, if we do our mantra chanting, if we study the philosophy, our mind becomes calmer. It is not just wandering here and there. We become more resilient. We become less upset by life's ups and downs. We become steadier. Then as we are able to do more, that also makes us more confident. And then the inclusive bhakti can also energize our immersive bhakti. In this way, we can spiritualize all aspects of our life. So Arjuna, when on the battlefield, he's turning away, in one sense, the battlefield is, the army is ahead of him. Arjuna is turning away from that toward Krishna. When he's hearing the Bhagavad Gita, he's practicing immersive bhakti. Although he's in the battlefield, it's as if the battlefield is completely blotted out of the awareness. He's immersed in understanding Krishna's message. And after hearing the Bhagavad Gita's message, then he will turn toward the battlefield. So, and when he is fighting over there, at that time, what is he doing? Inclusive bhakti. So, when he is fighting, at that time, there is no reference in the Mahabharata and Arjuna is shooting arrows. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. While shooting arrows, he is not chanting the holy names. While shooting arrows, he is very seriously focusing on how to fight the best. So, when he says Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, that Kirtan doesn't necessarily have to be japa. That Kirtan means acting in a way we can glorify the Lord. So, when Arjuna acts as an excellent archer, he glorifies the Lord. Now, suppose, say, if we get a heart attack and we require a heart surgery, and the heart surgeon is a doctor. Now, would we want that heart surgeon to chant Hare Krishna while doing surgery or focus on doing the surgery properly? When you're doing surgery, your service to Krishna is to do the surgery properly. Isn't it? Yeah, you can have some background chanting of Hare Krishna mantra if you want. But the point is, our devotion should not become a distraction from our contribution. Because our contribution is not just mundane. Our contribution done in a mood of service to Krishna actually helps in maintaining the order of the world. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita uses the word Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha literally means inclusive bhakti. It actually does Loka Sangraha. Sangraha means maintenance of the world. Loka Sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. So the immersive bhakti does Atma Shuddhi. That the self-purification. So each one of us is a part of the world. And when we are living in the world, we are taking things from the world. So if we are taking things from the world, we have to reciprocate by giving things to the world also. So whatever is our role in the world, we perform it responsibly. And in this way, we both connect with the Lord internally and we contribute to the world in a mood of service to the Lord externally. And when we act in this way, Krishna says that you will ultimately attain me. In the late next session, I'll talk about more things. But here, Krishna tells Arjuna, this whole polarity is there. There are those who are opposed to me and those who are devoted to me. There may be many people in between in the Kurukshetra battlefield. There are people with different conceptions. Those who may be devoted but not necessarily to Krishna. Those who are virtuous but not necessarily fighting on the side of Krishna. There's a whole spectrum in between. And that is quite complex. We won't go into that. But essentially, we move from where we have free will. And if we use our free will to act in a mood of service to the Lord, then we can do the highest good to ourselves and we can do the highest good in our contribution to the world. So I'll summarize. I spoke broadly 3 points today. The first point I discussed was a quick recap of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and specifically this section which talks about, so 11 to 18, it talks about relationship with Krishna of various people. Those who work completely against him, those who work for him, and those who are in between. The second point I discussed about is of the demoniac nature. So I talked about Duryodhan defying Krishna. And so thus such people, they are on a downward trajectory. So if we use our free will to go against God and go against goodness, then we will be doomed. So this is, and Krishna talks about demoniac nature and its destination. So this is given a description, it's more like a cautionary note. Don't do this. So that's the point. And then the last part, which I discussed elaborately, was the divine nature. It's from verses 11 and 12, 13 and 14. So, and here we discussed how that Krishna is the biggest whole that we belong to. And if we have a conflict between two wholes, so if I am here, so we belong to multiple wholes. So the biggest whole is Krishna. So we focus on serving Krishna and receiving his mercy. And that does not mean we reject the smaller role that we are part of, the smaller wholes that we are part of, but we harmonize them. So when Krishna says sarva dharman parityajya, he's basically what he's saying is that don't get caught up in various duties. Think of how you can serve me and then choose the role, choose the duty that will help you to serve me the best. And in that connection, we talk about serving Krishna when you practice bhakti yoga. That is, there is immersive and there is inclusive bhakti. When we act in a find an adequate, appropriate balance of both of these, then we can both do Atma Shuddhi, we can purify ourselves, become better beings, and we can also do Loka Sangraha, we can contribute better in the world. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please. Yeah.
So one question is that you described various holes being a subset of each other. So I'm just trying to understand, when in dilemma, does one hole really overpower another, or like why is it represented in the form of holes, like one bigger than the other? Is it?
Okay, so is one whole bigger than the other? Well, it depends. It is just a representation. That say like a family is one unit, a nation. No, just put up that only. Yeah. So the unit, there are bigger. There are various units. The point is that at different times, a particular bigger unit may be more important for us. So is it that the company that we belong to is more important than our family? Well, the company may be bigger, but that does not mean necessarily that it's more important. It depends on context also. So it is just a representation. The size of the whole is not representative of the importance of the whole. Of course, the ultimate whole, yes, that is true. That Krishna is the most important whole. Okay. Yeah.
And the other one was, the other question is, you talked about immersive bhakti and inclusive bhakti, and both of them energize each other, but there is a certain like in inclusive bhakti, it's towards the material world, but like how exactly does the immersive bhakti empower us to fulfill our duty to the material world, like so like
Okay, so how does immersive bhakti help us to do our duty in this world? Sometimes bhakti can be seen as, or can be thought of, or even sought as escapism from the world. So where we see that, oh, this world is such a complicated, messy place, I just want to turn away from it, get rid of it. Well, it's not that simple. Even if you renounce the world, still we are in the world, in a different role. So even those who are renounced, they also have responsibilities. So you just cannot go away from the world entirely. So if bhakti is seen as a form of escapism, then it could be a problem. But otherwise, what bhakti gives us, the immersive bhakti gives us that conviction that I am not just a fragmented, solitary being in an uncaring or harsh world. That I'm not just alone, just flapping around, trying to do something, trying to survive. We are intrinsically parts of something bigger. That bhakti, immersive bhakti, gives us that experience and that conviction that our existence has meaning. that our endeavors have value. If we are only looking at the world, now we may start thinking that there are so many terrible things happening in the world. There is a recession here, there is a war there is corruption here, there is abuse there. What can I do? What difference can it make? Does what I do even have any point at all? So if you just look at the world, the hugeness and the messiness of the world can actually cause us to devalue not just our endeavors, but even our very existence. That's why from materialism is where we are focused only on the world. So from materialism, it is actually a quick slide to what is called as nihilism. Nihilism is basically the idea that everything is meaningless. There was a prominent philosopher, you could say, not exactly philosopher, who said that the life is suffering. Therefore, the only philosophical question worth asking is whether to commit suicide today or tomorrow. What a dark view of the world. It's tragic. You can laugh, but it's tragic actually. But it's not. If we just look at the world and we can just see death happening randomly, seemingly randomly, destruction happening, everything can seem pointless. So, while some people think that materialism will make me work more hard and work more ambitiously, it's not that simple. Materialism can, because as long as somebody thinks, oh, by wealth, by power, by prestige, I will do things, I'll gain pleasure, I'll make a difference. Till that point, that person will have some power to pursue. But over a period of time, everybody becomes disillusioned by these things. I gain wealth, but it really doesn't bring the joy that I thought it will give. Even if I actually gain power, but even after gaining power, we realize that, for my power, I'm dependent on so many other people. There are these pressure groups, and I have to satisfy this person and that person, that person. There's a former American president, he said that my whole tenure as the president of America, I felt as if I was yelling on a phone with nobody at the other end. And the president of America is supposed to be the most powerful person in the world. He just felt there's not much I could do. So just if we have a purely materialistic view of the world, we can just feel, our actions can feel pointless. But when we understand that we are parts of Krishna, and Krishna has a bigger plan for the world. So our role in it may be small, but just because it is small doesn't mean it is valueless. So that way, the bhakti is life affirming. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Yes, welcome to you. Okay, where here? There's a second mic. Yeah, okay, Mata, you can ask. We'll come to you later, Mata.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mata.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class. It was very, very helpful. I have one question. In general, when we go out to distribute books, or we meet people or family members who have a view that doing good to the society, I'm doing charity, and I can see the happiness on people's face, that makes me satisfied, giving food or things like that, giving education or to home or things like that. And generally we just try to encourage them and leave them at their like whatever they are doing, and you're doing good like that. My question is that what is a better way that we can actually connect them to the bigger whole, as a Krishna that we were just discussing, that you were talking, in our effort to connect them to Bhakti Yoga or Krishna? What would be what would really inspire them?
Yeah. So if somebody has a humanitarian instinct where they want to do good to others, and they can see the tangible effects of the good. Somebody is hungry and we give them food and we see that person becoming joyful. That gives us joy. That's what they would like to do. And then if in that situation, how can we inspire them to connect with Krishna or practice bhakti? Yeah. In fact, that was my journey towards spirituality also. When I was in college, I had joined a welfare organization, and I had a lot of faith in the power of education. So I would go to the underprivileged areas, and I would offer, as a part of that organization, free tuitions to the kids over there. In English, math, history, few subjects like that. And then over a period of time, I became friends with those kids. And then I soon realized that they were coming from dysfunctional families. Generally, the fathers, they were alcoholics, and there was domestic violence. And I had a stereotypical idea of somebody the alcoholic is just like a person who's a drunkard who is just fallen on the side of the road, maybe in a gutter or something like that. But when I met those parents, those fathers, very nice people, and they were great. They were grateful to me that I was coming and offering those tuitions to their kids. And then those kids would tell me that when my father drinks, he just becomes a different person. So then I talked with the leaders of that organization, and we decided to diversify into de-addiction. So we got some anti-alcohol campaigners to come, anti-alcoholism campaigners to come, and we learned and we gave some talks, offered some guidelines. And that one smart, in India we use the word slum, so one smart slum in that area, that actually became alcohol free. Now we were very happy about that. But I had my exams. After my exams, I went there, and then I found that it was just devastating. What had happened was there was a local municipality election, and in that election, one of the candidates, in order to woo the people, had brought 2 truckloads of liquor, free. And not only the fathers, but even the kids had got drunk. And that's when it struck me that when we try to help others, it's like, say, if society, since society there's a hierarchy, somebody is, say, down here, and somebody is up here. We have the haves and the have-nots, we are the wealthy and the poor. So often we think that we should open doors for people to rise upwards. And education is one door, charity is one door. There are various kinds of, we open doors, and that's important. But that was now alcoholism was a problem in that community. But I was in a good college in India, but I could see some of my friends in the engineering college also succumbing to alcoholism. At that time drugs were not that big. But so I realized that while we may open doors externally for people to walk through, there is something like an internal sabotager within us. And that inner sabotager prevents us from walking through the doors that are open for us. And helping people holistically means not only opening the outer doors, but actually freeing them from their inner sabotager also. If we don't do that, then the open doors, they will not be able to avail the benefits. So that is when I started exploring spirituality. And then when I read in the Bhagavad Gita about how inside all of us is our mind, and the mind is filled with selfish desires, and that is what sabotages us. That's what inspired me to practice the Bhagavad Gita and share the Gita's wisdom. And this is not just my realization. There are lots of sociological surveys also which have been done, which talk about how even well-intentioned humanitarian efforts don't always have the desired results. We want to deal with those who are underprivileged. We want to help them, but people are in a difficult position, not just because they lack external resources, but often it is also because they lack inner resources. External resources is to get food, clothing, shelter, education, those things. That's important. But inner resources is to actually to be able to fight the inner demons within them, to fight the sabotaging agents inside. If we don't help them do that, then a person might be a poor alcoholic and that person becomes a wealthy alcoholic. How much of a difference are we making in that person's life really? Sometimes giving outer resources, it can just be like putting water in a bucket with a big hole below. So we need to offer holistic help. And yes, definitely, anybody who is concerned about people who are underprivileged, people who are deprived, that person is good because because they're thinking of something bigger than themselves. So we could say that they are far-sighted in the sense that, or you could say that not far-sighted. You could put that they are selfless. They're thinking of something bigger than themselves. But then what we can help them to do is become effectively selfless, not just sentimentally selfless. And oh, I do some charity for some people, I feel so good about it. Well, yeah, you feel good, that is nice, but are you actually doing good? Or is there a better way to do good? Is there a more effective way to do good? So spirituality is not just about turning away from the world. So effectively selfless means we provide people outer resources and we provide them also inner resources. Outer resources can be in terms of facilities, but inner resources can be in terms of helping them combat their inner demons and become more responsible, become capable of making healthy choices. And bhakti spirituality does help people in doing that. Those who, if they connect with Krishna, they start chanting the holy names, it's amazing how self-destructive habits just fall apart. They just disappear. And the person's life becomes so much better. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, bro.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have like one question. Like, since you said that Bhagavad Gita as it is, just one question. Does that mean like, is it as it is, or is it coming down from the Sampradaya, and is it as it is, how the Guru Maharaj told it? Because like, if you see like, it's like if you look at the four Sampradayas, right, they use Bhagavad Gita as the main thing, but there's huge differences, like Vishishta Advaita and Ashinta.
Okay. When you say Bhagavad Gita as it is, what does it mean? Well, first thing is that Krishna is unlimited. And therefore, that means that unlimited Lord can be appreciated in many different ways. In 10.8, Krishna talks about those who know him. To know Krishna is to be enlightened. Aham sarvasya prabhu mattaha sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. The Buddha is enlightened. But in 10.9, Krishna says that what does enlightened people do? He says, Macchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam. So what are they saying? That the enlightened, they are enlightening each other. Specifically the word is bodhayantaha. So if they are enlightened, how can they keep enlightening each other? Aren't you already enlightened? Isn't it? So the understanding here is that enlightenment can be seen in two different ways. Enlightenment is both a destination and a journey. So it is a destination in terms of understanding that Krishna is the ultimate object of love for us. That he is the biggest whole that we belong to. In that sense, to understand that Krishna is the ultimate object of love, ananyas chintayanto mam, ananya chetasa. Yes, there's no other object of love. That is enlightenment. But then, a journey is that Krishna is unlimitedly lovable. Because Krishna is infinite, I may appreciate Krishna from one perspective and you may appreciate Krishna from another perspective. So, if we consider this is Krishna, I am seeing Krishna from here and say you are seeing Krishna from here. So, if I talk with you, then I can enlighten you and you can enlighten me. So that's how bodhayantaha parasparam. So Bhagavad Gita as it is, when Prabhupada says it, it's not an exclusivist claim that only my Bhagavad Gita is right and all other Bhagavad Gita is wrong. He says as it is means that the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita is very clear in consistently and conclusively in emphasizing the purpose of the Gita. The Gita has a complex flow of thought, but it concludes very clearly in Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. So in general, in spirituality, there are two things which need to be known. This is sadhya and sadhan. That what is it that, in general, say if you want to go out your house, where do you want to go and how do you want to go? So these two are essential. In English, they can be called as this is path and purpose. So means and ends, but path and purpose. So the idea is that the Gita is quite clear. Sarva Dharman Parityajya makes it very clear that bhakti is the sadhan. And we can look at Arjuna's self-understanding. What does Arjuna say? He says that Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam. Krishna is the ultimate reality. So Krishna is the sadhya. So now this particular conclusion that can be arrived at from different perspectives. So yeah, Vishishta Advaita and then we can have Dvaita Advaita, so many different Dvaita philosophies. All these philosophies are there. They arrive at this conclusion of Krishna as the sadhya and bhakti as the sadhan from different perspectives. So as long as that sadhya and sadhan is consistently maintained, that all such commentaries are Bhagavad Gita as it is. Okay, good question. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Please, yeah.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the lecture. Sir, my question about the philosophy of circles is, in this materialistic world, we are in a lot of circles with lot of combinations. And oftentimes, being in this nature, you get confused that whether should you be what kind of decision should you take? Should you be more focused towards the team, or should you take decisions better for the company? Should you be a better son, or should you be a better husband? Etc., etc. So how to break all those tangles?
Welcome to reality. Yeah, it is difficult. See, essentially, life's difficulties. As I said, that the biggest difficulties are not just the bad thing that happened to us. If we talk about stress, stress doesn't just come because of having too many things to do. That's what generally we talk about stress management. Okay, delegate to other people. That's one thing. Too many things to do, and that can cause stress. But actually, much more stress is caused by having too many difficult decisions to make. Say for example, if we have to move from one city to another city. Now moving is stressful. But suppose you have to decide whether to move or not. And if I move, should I move to this city or that city? Should I take this job or that job? Should I stay in this house? Should I take a house over here or a house over there? Should I put my child in this school or that school? All those decisions, they are weighty decisions. And that's what causes stress. So it is tough. So what do we do about this? Well, if we can look at the spectrum of decisions that we have to make, see, some are positive and negative. Positive means that this is clear for us. We should do these things. And these are don'ts. So if we have do's and don'ts, so to the extent we make the choices that we know are right, to that extent we are developing our inner compass. Our inner compass is also like our muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it becomes. So where we know what is right, if we keep doing that, then what will happen is, if we do this and we avoid this, then the gray area that is there in between, that will start slowly becoming clearer. Krishna also says that if we are acting in a mood of service to him, that tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. We pray to Krishna and we try to connect with him in a mood of service. Then dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. Dadami, he gives us the inner guidance. It gives us the inner clarity about how we can function. So in general, broadly speaking, when such decisions are made, there are two factors. There is intelligence and there is experience. So if a decision has to be made in the moment, then we, whatever intelligence we have, whatever we think is right at that time, we do that. But after that, we evaluate. And then what happens by that is that, okay, in that I did this, but maybe I should have thought of this also at that time. I didn't think about it. Learn from it. So basically what happens is, our experience, it sharpens our intelligence. And our intelligence, it informs our experience. And in that way, it becomes, through this, we gradually move towards becoming wiser. We can never be guaranteed to always make right decisions. But we can move towards refining our decision-making process so that it becomes more right. And then even if some decision turns out to be wrong, we can do course correction and come back on the right track. Okay. Thank you. Okay, how many questions do we have? Yes, Maya, go ahead. Okay. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, you showed the different circles and you mentioned that we can, for a family, we can say we are raising kids, with keeping Krishna in mind, or working as a software engineer with the overall goal of Krishna. I mean, for me, I completely agree with that, but it's very theoretical. I mean, for example, as far as my profession is concerned, I do what is to be done. Maybe give, certain percentage service to Krishna, which I feel okay. I've really worked for Krishna as far as that percentage is concerned. But the rest, I feel I'm using it. So, I mean, based on the level where I am, how do I really embrace it? I mean, I completely agree with that statement, but for me, it's very, very theoretical, all aspects. I mean, I want to, dovetail my family, as a service to Krishna. But then I remember it and then I forget it. Especially when I go in the social world or the outside world. How do I practically actually implement that concept?
Yes, like I mentioned, when I'll rephrase the question, see, we may want to offer our entire being to Krishna, but especially when we are acting in the world, it is easy to forget that. So yeah, it's, as I said, when Arjuna was fighting, it was not that he was constantly thinking of Krishna. He was thinking of Krishna in the sense that the fighting was for the purpose of serving Krishna. So we could put it, if we say that if this is our consciousness, then say this is the foreground of our consciousness and this is in the background of our consciousness. So for example, right now, you're sitting and hearing. So probably in the foreground of your consciousness is this class. In the background, when is prasad? When are we going to have food? So now maybe how this might work is, at the start of the class, in the foreground is this, is the class. Maybe food is in the background. But as the class moves forward, the class goes longer and longer. What happens is, the class might be the foreground, but the food becomes prominent. So the point is that there are many things in our consciousness, something in the foreground, something in the background. So for us, whatever we are doing, that has to be in the foreground. And when we are doing something new, at that time it requires more attention. And what is in the background may just go way in the background. Say for the first time, if you speak in public, then we are very, very conscious. How are people responding to me? How am I pronouncing words? What are my hand gestures? What is this? But if we have spoken many times in public, then the fact that I'm speaking in public doesn't matter so much as what I am speaking. What is my purpose? So over a period of time, when there is a structure in our life where we are doing similar activities overall, then what happens is that the what we are doing, that does not require so much of our consciousness. So to put it another way, in the initial stages of our life, say our Krishna might be just in the background over here, and our work will be prominent. And over a period of time, what will happen is, as we keep both practicing bhakti and become more experienced in the world. See, when we are new, and every small upheaval, we feel like this is like the end of the world for us. But as we keep practicing, yeah, ups and downs come, we become a little more experienced. We are concerned, but we don't get disturbed by every single up and down in the world. So then what happens is, our work will still be in the foreground, but Krishna will become more prominent. That I am doing this work for Krishna. So it will happen gradually. And as long as, say, we start our day with praying to Krishna, with wanting to act in the mood of service to Krishna, during the day, what we are doing, we may or may not remember Krishna, but overall our day will be directed in the mood of service to Krishna. And then at the end of the day, we can Narayana Yati Samarpayami. I offer what I am doing to Lord Narayan. That way, we can spiritualize our consciousness. Okay?
Thank you very much. Very helpful. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu, we'll have that. And then we'll ask question here.
Yeah. So, Prabhu,
Any of them? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Prabhu, you explained about Duryodhana, right? The demonic nature and all. Actually, Lord also appreciated him, right? In the way like Balaram, the immediate expansion. So Balaram liked Duryodhana so much. So even he, at the end after the Kurukshetra war, there is some disagreement between kind of explicitly.
Yeah.
So it is like, although some people are demonic, still sometimes Lord indirectly is supporting, right?
Okay. So, why Balram supported Duryodhan is often a mystery. Now, the point is that Balram supporting Duryodhan is not so much due to Duryodhan's qualities as it is due to Lord's compassion. Yes, that the Lord supported Duryodhan, but that does not mean we should become like Duryodhan and the Lord will support us. That is not the teaching of scripture. So, the teaching of scripture is that we should try to become like Arjuna. Now, at a more rasic level, at a more esoteric level, what is happening is that the Lord often likes confrontation. See, generally, if there is no opposition, then there is not much excitement. If there is a movie, say the movie is that at the start of the movie, the hero meets the heroine, and then the movie just goes on, they keep getting to know each other, and then they come together at the end. There is no villain, there is no third person, there is no opposition. Then it becomes boring. Isn't it? What draws attention is some kind of tension. Isn't it? So the Lord is omnipotent. Actually, nobody can oppose him. But the Lord sometimes empowers people to oppose him. So, the Lord is supporting Arjuna. So, the Lord in his own expansion, as Balram supports Duryodhan, and that's how the Lord experiences what can be called as a variant of Vairya-rasa. Just as the Lord himself, as Balram, he becomes the servant of the Lord, he becomes the Ananta Sheshnag on which the Lord lies down. So he is his intimate associate, he is the Lord himself, but he serves the Lord in various ways. So in this particular situation, he is serving the Lord by opposing him and thereby creating some more excitement in the pastime. Okay, thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Any of the Matajis have any questions? Okay. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, so on the point about the gray area, right? So there are certain times when we are not able to decide which responsibility of ours is more important. But then that also, personally, what affects me is like, okay, I'm stressed about, okay, what to decide. And then emotionally, that's, putting me down, and then that's affecting my, practices also, because I'm not able to give my heart. If I'm stressed about something, even while I'm chanting, I'm like not 100% in my chanting, so I'm also feeling bad. Okay, I am thinking that, okay, I'm looking at the bigger whole, but actually I'm nowhere now. So how do I move forward?
Yes. See, just because we are connected with Krishna does not necessarily mean that immediately everything will become clear for us. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, he wrote the song Markine Bhagavad Dharma. And there he says, Ache kichu karya tabe ei anumane. That you must, anuman actually means guess. I guess you must have some purpose for me. Otherwise, why would you have brought me here? Nahe keno anibena ei ugrastane. So the point is, Prabhupada was purely devoted to Krishna. He had come to America just for the purpose of serving Krishna. And yet, it was not that Prabhupada had, like Krishna was broadcasting some TV into Prabhupada's heart. You go here, you'll meet this person. You go here and you will open a center here and this will happen. Prabhupada was trying various things. Some things worked, some things didn't work. If some things didn't work, Prabhupada recalibrated and tried something else. So, just because our intention is to serve Krishna does not mean that immediately we will have clarity. And so when we are chanting, one aspect of practicing bhakti, we often talk about bhakti in terms of faith. And we also often equate faith with certainty. I have faith in Krishna, I have faith in Shastra, and therefore I will do this. I was in Texas and I saw one quote, which says that God said it, I accept it, that settles it. Well, that might seem like faith, like a strong faith. But okay, even if God has said it, what does that statement mean in today's world? Like Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight. Does that mean we all have to start fighting? There is one Christian skeptic who wrote a book about living the Bible 100 days literally. And it's a humorous book, like a laugh riot. So he says that the Bible says, if you find an adulterer, start stoning the adulterer. Now, should we start doing that today? So nobody can live literally. And that is not the import of scripture itself. This is not to make fun of Christianity at all. The point is that it doesn't work like that. So there is a certain gray area. So devotion does not just mean faith and certainty. Devotion can also mean humility. And humility means comfort with uncertainty. That I am a tiny being and I don't know everything. And sometimes for me to come to an understanding may take time. And sometimes I may never understand something. So we need to be able to accept our uncertainty, accept our limitedness, and we need to be able to live with uncertainty. So when we are unable to decide, then at that time when we are chanting, when we pray to Krishna, Krishna, please help me to accept this situation that I am in. So we want a decision because we want to move ahead. But that situation when we are undecided, we can see that also as an opportunity to develop humility, to remind ourselves of our finiteness. And that way we can also connect with Krishna at that time. Okay? So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you once again very much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful program. Dear devotees, as we mentioned earlier, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu has written many books, 16 if I'm not wrong. And we have an opportunity, they have been placed here. Please review it. If we would definitely encourage lots of devotees to buy them. Prabhu is here, can personally sign it if you have any questions. And Prabhu, you want to add anything? Krishna,
can I just speak a little bit about the books?
Please, Prabhu.
So these are mostly I have written in the Bhagavad Gita, but there are many other books also. My latest book is on the mind. This is You Are Not Your Mind, you are better. So this is 64 illustrated reflections for managing the mind. So why does our mind have almost like bipolar mood swings? When our mind is working against us, what can we do at that time? How can we get ourselves to do something which we don't like to do, which we don't feel like doing? What exactly is the mind? What is the difference between the mind and the brain? And how are the modes affecting the mind? So questions like this are answered in this book through 64 articles. So like the diagram that I was drawing, there are many diagrams also in this book. And so if you want to better manage the mind, this is quite a helpful book. And then this is wisdom from the Ramayana on life and relationships. There are about 20 incidents from the Ramayana explained and then analyzed for life lessons. So Sugriva and Vali were brothers and best of friends, but they end up becoming mortal enemies. So why did that happen? How can we avoid misunderstanding that will lead to such breakdown in relationships? Or how was Kaikai manipulated by Manthara? How can we avoid people manipulating us or our own mind misleading us? Then books like that's explained through 20 articles in this book. And then there are several other books also. This is Bhagavad Gita if you want to know how it can help us in leadership. The 10 leadership principles based on the Bhagavad Gita. So like that, there are several other books also available. If any of you would like to have these books, I'm available for signing. If you take the whole set, then it's also available at a discount. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
So, dear devotees, as next steps, we'll have prasadam. The prasadam will be served in the garage. Feel free, actually, weather permitting, we'll have it in the backyard or, get your prasadam plates here in the garage, whatever works. Just give us 5 minutes so that, cooks can be there, servers can be there.